what's going to tell the story of a successful campaign for you?
So you almost get a better audience, and at the same time you're paying less. So it's a win-win no matter how you look at it.
Welcome everyone to Advertising Hacks for small businesses looking for incremental growth. My name is Josh O, and I'm the founder of Product Expert. I'm also the content creator behind the YouTube channel Debt to Dollars. Beside me is my good friend Gavin Cheung. Gavin, you mind just introducing yourself to the audience here today?
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Gavin. I'm a co-founder of a company called Motion Gray. We currently sell ergonomic furniture throughout North America, and I've been selling on Amazon for 6 years now.
Awesome, thanks Gavin. Well, today we'll be exploring essential Amazon ads tools for advertisers who are starting out. This will be a more beginner level focused conversation between Gavin and I, bringing our experience and what we learned over the past, for me, 7 years, and for you, about the same amount of time, and how you can really take these strategies and go home with them. So let's begin, Gavin.
Yeah, I like to start off with asking you, what are some basic tools you would recommend small to medium-sized businesses to use to optimize their overall campaign?
Well, I think a few come to mind. I think like Canva and the Amazon Ads integration there, that's one of the key players in creating visuals for your sponsored brands ad list. I know for my business and my Vivere golf products, going from just a static ad listing to creating a visual or putting a video and using Canva to create that, that's really increased our click-through rates, especially in overall conversion rate. The second thing that comes to my mind would be Amazon auto campaigns. You know, I'm sure you're well aware, within just 1 click, 2 clicks, you're able to bring this almost expert level campaign to life, and it's great for those beginners out there. For me, more of intermediate expert level, I use it day to day for discovering new keyword phrases, discovering those keyword phrases in search terms that customers may be typing in that you may or may not be aware.
I second that for sure. I think auto campaigns are one of the best ways to look at brand analytics. This way you can look at things like insights, conversions, and even consideration. And I think when you have those metrics, it really helps you optimize all your campaign.
Have you ever used the recommendations tab in the ad console?
Yeah, so I actually oftentimes use the recommendations, but I do recommend small business owners to look through the recommendations to make sure you're not just blindly trusting it. A lot of times it's a good suggestion, but you still need to understand what they're suggesting. But what have you noticed with your campaigns?
Very similar ideas, but yeah, the recommendations tab, I think for beginners, advertisers, it's really important because it gives you insight as to, what do I need to do to increase my brand performance? How can I achieve a higher click-through rate? And just within a small block, an insight, it tells you exactly what you need to do. Good, all good points there. So, we're talking about these advertising hacks that are coming up, but before we even get into the ad console or creating a sponsored products or sponsored brands campaign, what are some basic optimization steps that a beginner advertiser can take?
I think it's really important to understand that before any type of Amazon ad campaign, you need to optimize your listings. When it comes to a listing, think of it like this. If it's not optimized and people come to your listing, they're not going to want to buy it if the images are off, if the titles are off, or if you have no A+ content. So because of that, you need to make sure that your titles, your pictures, A+ content is all optimized and as good as it gets. Once you do it properly, you don't really ever have to touch it again. It's very important to emphasize that you're wasting money if you don't optimize your ads beforehand. So Josh, do you have any tips on how you would optimize your ads and listings?
I think you really hit home there, like of the main ones. I would say from mainly the students I teach who are beginner advertisers, I say this is part they often overlook. They think, all right, I have my products, I've created my listing, it may be an okay listing, but they just want to step into advertising and to really begin to sell their product. They don't achieve the results they're looking for, and a lot of the times it comes down to optimizing their listing, improving their images, the title, as you mentioned. So that's really a good first part, I think, and allowing yourself to set yourself up for success, I should say.
Yeah, think of yourself as a customer. Would you want to purchase something if the image is a bit off?
No.
If, for example, like just the other day, I wanted to buy something and I noticed that the image was not that professional. And because of that, it made me look at all the scratches. I saw all the details of the product and I just didn't want to buy it. So yeah, it really makes me think about how when it comes to your listings, A+ content is also proven to do much better. So if you have an A+ on your listing, it's actually proven to convert 20% more.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
That exact statistic.
So now that we have our listings optimized, what are some keyword hacks that you would recommend customers to do with their ads?
Previously, I mentioned about Amazon auto campaigns. I think that's a great way for discovery. from beginner advertisers the whole way to expert advertisers. It's a really great way to understand those search terms that customers are typing in. I think that's one hack. Another one, which in particular I love, and I think it's extremely undervalued, would be the Product Opportunity Explorer. That you can access, if you're not familiar with it, you can access it through Seller Central. You can type in a keyword for your product niche or your specific ASIN for your product, and it just delivers you all of the most relevant search terms over the 30-day, 90-day period with relevant search volume, with the competition levels. And it allows you to understand what specifically on Amazon customers are typing in order to discover a product like yours or a similar ASIN. So I really love the Product Opportunity Explorer.
So do you have any examples of using this?
So it's really my go-to, I would say, in addition to some of the third-party keyword resources and platforms like Jungle Scout or Helium 10. I love the Product Opportunity Explorer because one, it's free, and two, you're sourcing data directly from Amazon, and these are search terms that customers are typing in for your specific product. The other thing I was thinking would be, I don't know if this is really an advertising hack, it's more of a strategy, I would say, but I think it fits into this conversation, and that would be to consider or value relevant keyword phrases and targets over ones that just have sheer high volume. I think too often people, they'll have their product idea, they'll create a campaign, and they're just looking for keyword phrases that have a very high search volume. Instead, it may make more sense to go with a lower search volume keyword phrase that's more relevant to your product. So, for example, with Motion Gray, co-founder of, let's say you're launching a new standing desk that has a maple tabletop surface. Now, if it was me, I'm sure you'd agree, you'd want to target maple standing desk or that phrase compared to maybe one that has higher search volume, such as white standing desk.
Yeah.
You don't want to target white standing desk because that customer, that target audience is not going to be looking for your specific product. So I think that relevant keywords are more valuable than ones that just have sheer higher volume.
Yeah, and I often notice too that these more targeted long tail keywords are actually cheaper for bidding too. So you almost get a better audience, and at the same time you're paying less. So it's a win-win no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're on the topic of hacks and advertising hacks. I think it was back in October of 2022, the first Prime Big Deal Days came out, and it was a sensation for us advertisers and sellers. For you and your business, what are some sales hacks during these sales seasons that you'd recommend beginner advertisers?
Yeah, so I think first off, everyone needs to realize that when a big season like this hits, like Prime Day, it's different than normal days of the year. So for example, you can't compare an average Monday, like let's say next week versus Prime Day when there's 10 times more traffic to the Amazon website.
Right.
So because of this, you need to plan your budgets properly, and you need to set up your campaigns properly to target all the customers during each phase of the funnel. So for example, I like to separate my budgets and campaigns into 3 sections. The first section is before the actual day. The second one is the actual day, and the third day is after the event. So for example, before the event, what I'm really focused on is raising awareness. So what my campaigns are really focused on is getting in front of as many customers as possible so that they can see my brand and get familiar with it. On the actual Prime Day itself, what I'm gonna do is triple my budget because there's gonna be triple the amount of customers, and that is when I'm gonna really be focusing on sales. The reason I'm gonna triple my budget is because as more people click my products, I don't want it to run out of budget halfway through the day. Lastly, after the event itself, I'm gonna set up some retargeting campaigns for people that didn't have the time to purchase it, or people that missed the chance to buy it and they might still wanna buy it afterwards. What have you noticed with your seasonal trend?
For me, at least my business, I focus more on actual seasonal products. So unfortunately, the Prime Big Deal Days doesn't coincide with golf season for golf products, but as far as that, I would say one thing to focus on, I think you mentioned, was to really focus on stock in your units ahead of these events. It can take a good bit of time for your units to be checked into the FBA if you're using that program. So I'd recommend at least 2 months if you're able to, if not at least 1 month before those events happen. Get your inventory stocked, create your ad campaigns, and then just be ready for that moment of time when those deal days begin.
That was actually a great point that you have. Like every season is also not the same. So for example, leading into Q4, you definitely should have your inventory stocked. I think that a lot of times beginner advertisers, they miscalculate their inventory levels and it ends up really messing up the sales during the sales season. So having said that, Josh, how do you think small business owners should prioritize their ad budgets and their bids?
Good question. For small businesses, I think it's very, very important to start small and then scale from that point on. And I know you briefly touched upon that in your last response. The reason why that's so important is it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the data you're exposed to. It's very easy to get overwhelmed thinking that you have to start out with a large budget of $30, $50, $100 per day when it's not necessarily the best strategy. And if you were to ask me, my opinion on that would be, if you start small with a budget of, let's say, $5 to $10 a day, that's great. That's really all you need to do is start getting data into your ad campaigns. And then once you see the data and you're reviewing your metrics, then it's the time to optimize. And as you optimize, eventually, then you'll be able to scale because, in theory, if you're focusing on one core metric, such as your ACoS being a certain percentage, your advertising cost of sales, once you've achieved that, whether you have a $10 budget or a $30 budget per day, in theory, you should expect similar results. It's not always going to happen, but in theory, you should have similar results, if not better.
Yeah, definitely start off with a smaller budget. I think that as you become a more experienced seller and an experienced ad campaign manager, that's when you can get more aggressive as your ACoS, as you're getting more profit, as you're getting more sales. Then you can spend more money in your campaigns. Don't worry too much as a beginner because I think that that's probably one of the most intimidating things as a new Amazon seller.
What's your take on what for your business in advertising, what metrics do you really pay attention to? Is there one that you always pay attention to for, let's just say, a sponsored products campaign?
Yeah, so up until actually recently, so when I started 6 years ago, the only thing I really look at is really ACoS. And the reason why is because in very simple terms, as long as your ACoS is below your margins, that means you're profitable. So very easy metric to look at. If my margin is 30, my ACoS is 29, it means I'm making 1% on every sale. If that's the case, I'm gonna keep ramping up all my ads, keep putting in more budget and more bids to make sure I keep getting more and more sales.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think we all look at that for efficiency, ACoS, or even your click-through rate. All right, great. So I did briefly mention about, with these campaigns and small to medium-sized businesses, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by all this data that we have at our disposal, at our fingertips. So, what can small to medium-sized businesses do not to get overwhelmed by data, especially for those beginner advertisers out there?
Yeah, so I think first off, it comes down to setting the actual campaigns. Make sure to clearly label all your campaigns so that you can sort each data point very easily. For example, when you only have one product, it's very easy to set up maybe 3 or 4 or 5 campaigns. But when you start having 10, 20, 30 products, it can easily be 150, 200 campaigns. Right. And if you're not naming them properly, you're gonna get very overwhelmed. The second point is the actual campaign optimization. If you're doing keyword targeting campaigns, I would say 10 to 30 keywords is more than enough. If you're adding too many keywords and you're spending a lot of time doing a lot of research, sometimes you might just be overdoing it. What have you noticed with that?
Yeah, I think good point with limiting your number of keywords. I mean, it really depends on what your objective is and your goal, I'd say. I mean, if you're looking for discovery, you want more keyword phrases and a broader phrase match type so you can better understand what customers are typing in.
Yeah.
However, at that same token, I agree with you personally. If you have an objective in mind, what you want to do with this sponsored products or this sponsored brands campaign, then it makes more sense to limit it to an amount of keyword phrases that you can comprehend and really just review on your own time. I would also say, just select 1 to 3 primary metrics that you really focus on for your campaigns. I know you previously said ACoS is that one for you and Motion Gray, but I think it's very important to know what's going to tell the story of a successful campaign for you. Is that having X amount of impressions? Is it having a certain percentage for your click-through rate to tell you how effective your ad is? Knowing what that is before creating your ad is really valuable, so that way as your ad's performing, is it performing up to your expectations and your goals, or is it not? And that way, you're not reviewing 20 different metrics trying to understand what's the story look like compared to, I have my 2 or 3 metrics that I'm really paying attention to, and that's going to tell my story if I'm being successful or not with my...
And how often would you actually look at these metrics?
For my business, I review them once per day, at least understand how things have been progressing. As far as optimizing the campaigns, maybe 2 times maximum per week.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go any more than that because as you tend to over-optimize, I should say, and change too many things, it's difficult to understand. If I change this, now I'm receiving poorer results. Was that the cause of that or the other 3 changes that I made?
Yeah. And I've noticed too that oftentimes, let's say if you optimize it too much, let's say within a week, a Monday is not the same as a Saturday. For example, people have different consumer trends throughout the week. If you're always proactively overreacting to your campaign metrics, you might be doing actually more harm to your campaigns than what it's supposed to be doing.
That's a good point, Gavin. All right, well, that wraps us up here today. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and for the audience here at the Prosper Show. Some key takeaways I took away from our conversation today is really to start small and then scale using Amazon ad products. In addition to, if you're a small business, small to medium-sized business, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by data. You have so many metrics at your disposal. So just really focus on a core key amount to keep you on track. And then lastly, we'd really recommend you taking at least one of these ad hacks with you at home and to apply it to an existing sponsored product, sponsored display campaign, or if you want to, create a new campaign with some of the ad hacks that we talked about and really take these actionable insights and put them into life. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just make sure to optimize your listings. Once you have everything good, you can start small. Don't get overwhelmed. Try not to do too much. Look at the metrics that are more relevant and also make sure that you're not doing too much, because if you do too much, oftentimes you're going to get discouraged, and that itself is going to make you hate the whole process.
Absolutely. Well, consider subscribing to our channels where you're watching this video on, and stay tuned for some more advertising videos that we'll be releasing in the coming weeks.